Hi, everyone. My name is Monica. Earlier this year, I launched In Her Words podcast after believing that through prayer last year, God spoke to me that it was time to share my life testimony with everyone. And I've been walking through my whole testimony with you all, and I'm not quite finished yet. Last week, my mother passed away, and I was one of her caretakers. I was one of the family members who were her legal guardian and had to make a lot of decisions for my mom's care. And it's been brutal. It's been really hard. And when she passed last week, even though of course it was heartbreaking to know that my mother was no longer on this earth, I had a lot of peace because I felt like God was stepping in and taking over my mother's care. And if you know my story at all, you'll know that my parents were married until I was 11. And then my mother remarried very quickly. And unfortunately, the man she married ended up sexually assaulting me when I was 11. And, that was a really, really confusing time, as you can imagine. My parents divorcing, a new man in the house, and then he ends up abusing me. And my heart was very broken at that age. And of course, at 11, you don't really know how to process that. And I remember thinking, I need to tell my mom. But how am I going to tell my mom that the man she just married did this to me? Because I knew that would be devastating to her. And even at that young age, I had such a hard time, but I ended up going to her and telling her. And if you follow my story, you'll know that about 4 years later, I started to care for, babysit 2 young children who were our pastor's kids. And I was spending a lot of time with that family. And by the age of 16, I was told by my mother and by this pastor and his wife that they all met and decided that I should move in with the pastor's family. So I'm not going to go into all of that story because you can go back to my videos and hear in detail how everything took place and what happened to me for those 3.5 years when I lived with the pastor's family and was sexually abused by that man, the pastor. And if you think about this for a moment and you look at it from my perspective of 11-year-old, going to your mom, telling her what your stepfather did, and noticing right away that he was still going to be married to my mom. She wasn't going to leave him. And that meant I would have to live in a household of always wondering if something was going to happen again. And fortunately, he never touched me again, but there were so many things that were done that were just so inappropriate and hurtful that when I left at 16, I was thinking, well, this is kind of weird that I'm moving in with these people, but I won't have to live with a pedophile stepfather. Not to know that just in a short time, within a year, I would be sexually abused by the pastor. So if you can think from my perspective what that felt like, if you can even try to imagine, it was very difficult. And I didn't tell anybody what happened with the pastor because I already knew that I had already told my mom what happened with my stepdad. And here I am in this man's home and just the influence he had and he still has to this day. It's hard for people to accept. Most people have reached out to me and I haven't had a lot of negativity at all, which has been surprising after sharing this story. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background of how I must have felt, right, at 11, and then again at 15 through 20. I was a wreck, you guys. I was a total mess. And even though my friends could tell you they would have never really known, they also told me now that looking back that I was very quiet at times, very reserved. And now that they look back maybe at some photos and think back about being with me, that maybe now they can tell something was going on with me. And they felt really bad that they didn't know. And it's just been heartbreaking even to hear from all those people who knew me back then and my friends and that they feel bad. But the point of me touching base with you today to talk to you is, it's been interesting to be one of my mother's caretakers and one of the people making huge decisions for her life and her last years, because I always felt like she abandoned me at 11 and I was left to figure things out on my own. And for a long time, I was very angry with her and just very hurt and broken. And as I've gotten older through the years and been able to go through counseling and really just cried out to God and asked Him to help me with all of my hurt, He's healed me. And I've been able to forgive my mom. But it's still been very interesting to be in this position of caring for someone who I felt like didn't take care of me and who actually put me in harm's way. I never told my mom what happened with the pastor. I just 2 months ago, almost 3 months ago, told everyone about it through YouTube and through meeting with people individually who I've been close to. But I didn't have the chance to talk to my mom about it because in January she had end-stage dementia. And I don't even know that I would have wanted to tell her because I already felt like she was probably very regretful about what happened when I was 11. And she did ask for forgiveness and I was able to forgive her. But we buried my mom 3 days ago on Monday. And of course, it's been hard. We had a beautiful, beautiful service for her. It was incredible. And I know if my mom was able to look down from heaven, she was very happy. It was beautiful. But last night I got a message from my younger sister because she's looking through boxes and she found something that my mother wrote. And it's something my mother never said to me. And it's something I've always wondered about. How did this happen? Why did she decide when I was around 16, 15 and a half, 16, why did she decide to let me move in with this pastor's family? Why didn't she fight for me more? Why didn't she leave this man who she knew was a pedophile? Why didn't she do that? And it's just been a heavy question, a heaviness that I've always wondered. And I always wondered, did she regret that? I mean, she apologized, but it wasn't these deep conversations or anything that I had with her. And last night, my sister sent me something, and I'm going to look down and read it. And it's a book that I bought for my mom. And I gave it to her many years ago. And she was supposed to start writing in it to share with us kids different parts of her life. And this question was asked to her in this book. I'm going to read it to you. And it asks my mom, what is one of the most difficult choices you ever had to make? Now, mind you, before I answer it, in my mother's words, I never knew she felt this way. I just buried her 3 days ago. And I've just recently spoke out loud what happened to me in those years when I lived with the pastor's family. And when I read this last night, I couldn't stop crying because I never knew she felt like this. So again, the question was asked, what is one of the most difficult choices you've ever had to make? And my mother's words are, I think allowing my daughter to stay with other people and did not know how to change the situation. The next question was, who would or would you make the same choice again? And my mother answered by saying, no, not at all, with 2 exclamation points. So here I am this week, still mourning my mother's loss with lots of emotions wrapped into it, sharing with the world really what happened to me for the first time ever, just a few short months ago. And a lot of what happened to me had to do with my mother's choices and other people's, of course. And she passes, and I felt like I honored my mom's life. I really do. And due to the ability and really the choice to forgive her, I was able to care for her in her last few years of life, even though I never felt cared for. So to get this message from my mom really last night is incredible, you guys. And it only makes me go back to what I say, and I'll say it over and over. How much forgiveness will heal you? It's healed me. I'm still healing, but it has healed parts of my heart that if I would have chosen to be bitter and angry and not forgive, I know that part of my heart would not be healed. I just know it. And after I read this, even though it really, it struck a chord in my heart, and I had a hard time going to sleep last night thinking about this, I had no idea that my mom regretted that choice. And I just wanted to share with you that when you forgive, it will set you free. It really will. And I'm still processing the fact that I've gone public, or that I've even spoke out loud what's happened to me. And I wrote a few things down last night as I was kind of soaking in what my mom wrote on that piece of paper. And I guess the only thing to do is to read a little bit of it to you, because it's probably best. I just said at the beginning of this year, I launched In Her Words because I knew that God was asking me to share my full story, not just the easy parts, but the truth, the parts I never thought I'd speak out loud. And I believe that He wanted me to confront what happened to me so that I could be finally fully healed, and so that others could find healing too. For years, I carried the heartbreak of not feeling protected. I never told my mom what happened in that pastor's home because I knew it would be devastating to her. And I never heard her say she regretted sending me away until last night. She passed away last week. I was her legal guardian, and I honored her and I took care of her, even though I hadn't felt mothered by her since I was a very little girl. And then last night, a night after her funeral, my younger sister found a note in my mom's things. And in it, she wrote that she regretted letting me live with those other people, the pastor's family, and that she wished she would have known how to get me out of that situation herself, and that she would never make that choice again. I had no idea that she felt this way. And it broke me open, because in the middle of me stepping out in obedience, telling my story, confronting deep pain, and then my mom dies, and then I find this, well, my sister found that note, a note I never expected, a piece of her heart I never knew existed. It's all so much. It's painful, it's healing, it's crushing, and it's comforting. But even in this, I see God's timing. I see His timing in everything. And I know that He's redeeming every part of my story. And this is what healing looks like sometimes. It's not polished, it's not easy, but it's honest. So if you're watching this today and there are things from your past, or maybe even your present, that you need to confront, but you just haven't done it yet because you haven't felt like you could, I urge you to go talk to somebody who you can trust, a professional, a good friend, somebody just to sit down and pour your heart out to. Because it's interesting, now that I've shared what happened to me just a few months ago, and it took 38 years to do that, I wish I would have shared it sooner. Of course, I didn't know that I could. I didn't know that I could for several reasons. I mean, I was told to take it to my grave, and that stuck with me for a long, long time. But then I decided, what would be the point? What good could come out of sharing such a dark story? But I decided to trust God with what He was asking me to do. So if you have something that you are dealing with, some type of heartbreak that feels impossible to heal, trust God with that. You guys, trust God with everything in your life, because He is so faithful. My life is not perfect, you guys. I don't come on here and have In Her Words podcast to come on here and to appear to have such a perfect life. I'm in the process of healing. There are still damaged relationships in my life, and some of those damaged relationships aren't even necessarily due to what I've done, but maybe what other people have done. But in the end, I have to trust God that He is in control, and that He loves me more than anybody possibly could, and He loves you more than anyone could. And His love is not based on your works, by what you can do for Him. It's actually based just off of Him loving you. God is love. That's who He is. He is love. And if we want to please God, the Bible says that we must have faith. And I have had to, you guys, in 2019, when I was divorced, I was 50 years old. I was living in my dad's basement at 50 years old, because when I was married for those 24 years, I was a stay-at-home mom. And even though I worked for several different companies, I worked for a nonprofit company at that time, and I wasn't making much money. I don't have a degree. And I was living in my dad's basement. And I remember my dad being really upset and worried for me and saying, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do, Monica? How are you going to make it?" And I just remember speaking in faith and saying, God's going to do it. Man is not my provider. God is my provider, and God will make a way. And that's what's so cool, Dad, is that when things look absolutely hopeless, when you put your trust and you put your faith in God and you rely on Him for everything, He will come through. And that's what a miracle is, right? And my life is a miracle. My life has been a miracle since I was born. My mom almost wasn't able to carry me when she was pregnant with me. Then I almost died when I was 3 years old. I was diagnosed with an incurable disease that I was miraculously healed from. Then we went through the divorce. My family, that was devastating. My dad told me recently that the day that he left, my sister and my brother and I were standing at the top of the stairs, and he was down by the door getting ready to walk out with suitcases in his hands. And if you heard my story before, I shared some of this with you, but I didn't know one part of it. He said that he remembers us standing there just crying and begging him not to leave. It was awful. And I was at the top of the stairs praying and coming against the devil from taking my dad from us, literally praying this as a 10 and 11-year-old girl. And I remember just sobbing and praying and coming against the enemy from taking my dad. And he said that I also ran outside, and when he got in the car to leave, I kissed the bumper of the car as he drove away. It was devastating. And then, of course, I walk into the pedophile stepdad, only to move in with the pastor's family, who said that they wanted to protect me and care for me and really just used me. That's what it felt like, just felt wrong. And so sad that that situation didn't turn out. And I felt like so much was stolen from me, not just my innocence, but I believe at the time my potential. And if you heard my story, you know that in my 20s, I move into a toxic relationship, of course, and get pregnant and then give my life back to God. And then that's where I met my first husband, and we were married for 24 years. And as I've said before, I should have gotten a lot of counseling before I got married, but I didn't. I didn't even know that. I don't know what I thought. I thought I was fine. So God has been here for me the entire time. And if that wasn't true, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't be here right now because there are so many reasons and statistics that would say I shouldn't be here right now. If anything, I should be an addict. I should be addicted to alcohol and drugs. I never have been. Thankfully, I never ran to those things. And I just was blessed enough not to fall into addiction, really, because that could have been me for sure. And now here I am, in 2021, divorced for 2 years. And I haven't gotten to the story yet right there about what happened when I met my husband now. And we've been married for a little over 3 years, and he's amazing. And I say it all the time because I have to say it. He's amazing. So I'll get into that story later. But if you know my life and the ups and the downs and the twists and the turns, you know that it's been a lot. It's been a lot. And when I tell people my life story, just the look on their face sometimes, I almost feel bad. I almost feel bad for you to have to hear it. But God is a redeeming God. He's a merciful God, and He can make beauty out of ashes. And that's what He's doing in my life. And the situation with my mom ending up being her caregiver after not feeling cared by her was a very humbling and forgiving thing to do, for sure, for me to do that. And I am honored that I was able to care for her. And like I said, we had a beautiful service for her. And then to find this note where she said something like she did in the middle of me sharing my testimony with you all was not just a note from her, it was a note from heaven. And God allowed my sister to find that so that I could read it and find some peace knowing that my mom did regret letting me move in with that family, because so much devastation came out of that, and she doesn't even know that, you guys. And that's okay. But thank you for listening. I'm going to continue on with my story. I want to share with you about when I met my husband that like I said, I've been married to now for 3 years. I want to share that story with you because it's so God. And the fact that I'm married to the man that I am today is just another obvious note that God is so redeeming, and He can make beauty from ashes. So hang in there, guys. Share your story with others. Seek healing and go to God with everything. and just make the decision that you're going to forgive those who've harmed you. Because as I sit here today, knowing that I've been able to do that, and knowing that my mom is with the Lord, and that I was able to close out that chapter with her with grace and forgiveness, you guys, really, it's a gift to me. And I believe it's a gift to generations to come in my family. So thank you all. I appreciate you all. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, share my videos. I know there's got to be at least one person who needs to hear what I'm saying. And I pray that's you. So thank you again. I hope you have an amazing day. I'll be making a video about how I met my husband that I'm married to now, and what we walked through at the very beginning of our marriage. And you're going to see God all over it again. So thank you so much for your time.